It was a dark and rainy night when I landed on planet Earth. For months I had been in orbit studying the humans. Well, just one human, Roxy. It was necessary for me to study her, learn all about how she spoke, what she ate, how she acted, because I was about to become her. You see, my name is Bloomberg, Customer Day Slitheen, and I have been sent here along with other family members to turn a profit. This will be done by selling off parts of this planet as raw fuel. But first, I can't go around looking like this. I need a disguise, and Roxy, poor Roxy, is to be that disguise. I picked a time when both she and her parents were out. I managed to gain access to the house through the back door, and I crept upstairs to her room. I knew she would be home from her shift at the restaurant soon. I had to make myself scarce. I hid in her wardrobe and waited. I waited and waited. She was late. Her parents would be home soon. My time window was closing. Just then, the front door opened. It was Roxy. She slammed the door shut and shouted, "Hello? Anyone home yet?" She ran upstairs into her room to get changed. Her blonde hair dripping from the rain, her brown eyes shined with the light, and her pale skin was ghostly white with the cold. This was it. She opened her cupboard door to get changed. As she opened the door, I leaped out onto her. She screamed in terror before silence. That was that. I spent the next 10 minutes converting her into a skin suit disguise for me to wear. But as I was adding the finishing touches to her zip, the front door opened. It was her parents. They were back. I hastily started putting Roxy on, putting my foot into her body and pulling her up. I sealed my forehead zip. "Are you home, Roxy?" I imitated her voice. "Yeah." I could hear the footsteps climbing up the stairs, the floorboards creaky as they came up. "Are you okay?" her mother said. "Yes, I'm fine," I replied, hoping that she wouldn't come in. The door opened. I had just enough time to pull Roxy's fringe down to hide my forehead zip. "How was work today?" "Oh, it was, fine, I guess." I could feel my stomach being compressed. It made a loud, gurgling noise. Squeezing myself into a human disguise has some nasty side effects. I felt a lot of ballast around the middle until I farted right in front of her mother. "Oh, excuse me, I need the bathroom. Would you excuse me?" I went bright red, but Roxy's mother looked equally as stunned. I quickly got out of there and went to the bathroom to hide. I had to get rid of her parents. But how? I locked the bathroom door, the gas exchange still playing up. Roxy's mother knocked on the door. "Are you okay in there?" "Yeah, it must have been something I ate earlier." Little did they know, the last thing I ate was Roxy. Her mother went back downstairs shouting, "Your dinner will be out soon." The gas exchange calmed down and I got off the toilet. I glanced at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked human. My green body was now human. Roxy's eyes were now my eyes. Now that I had my disguise, all I had to do was to wait to be summoned by the family. How long did I have to wait? Until then, I was stuck in the skin. "Roxy, your dinner's ready," shouted her parents from downstairs. I opened the bathroom door and went down to join them at the table. They were having fish and chips for tea, but I did not like this human food. I ate what I could. "What time do you have to work tomorrow, Roxy?" asked her father. I think my shift starts about 12. I really didn't want to do mundane human jobs, but that is another price I pay. It will all be worth it once we have the money, is what I tell myself. "Don't be late this time. Your boss rang to complain," he continued. I just tried to keep my head down and eat the rest of my dinner. "May I be excused?" I said politely. "But you haven't finished. Are you sure you're okay?" her mother said. "Yeah, I'm honestly fine. I'm, not that hungry." I got up from the table and made a hasty exit back to her room. I plotted my next hunt. A few hours passed. I had got used to being Roxy, but I was due a break. A chance to take her off and get naked. Her parents were watching TV and I could feel it was time to hunt. I crept downstairs and walked into the living room. They were sat on the sofa. This time, I wasn't interested in keeping up this disguise. I sat on the leather chair next to the sofa. I farted as I sat down and jokingly said, "Oh, I'm shaking my booty." "What's wrong with you?" her father asked. "Would you rather a silent but deadly?" I replied. "I need to open up to you about something." I stood up in front of them. I pulled Roxy's fringe back and tied it up in a bobble, revealing my zip. Her parents were shook. I think you will find it's hair-raising, literally. Look. I reached for Roxy's forehead and started opening the zip. Blue light flooded out of her forehead as I moved the zip across. As I got to the end, I stood there in front of them. They were pale with fright. I started pulling Roxy off. My head was free, and then my claws, which I used to drag the rest of the skin suit off. They watched as their daughter Roxy flopped to the floor, and in front of them stood a 9-foot-tall green alien. I am Slitheen, and you are my hunt. I had my hunt. I cleared up their bodies, dragging them down to the cellar with my big green claws. Once I had hidden them, I went back to reinstate my disguise. I picked up Roxy and started putting her back on, sticking my green giant foot into her forehead. The blue compression energy squeezed my body down so that I could fit back into her. What a squeeze! Once I had her back on, I adjusted her face so she fit perfectly. Suddenly, her back pocket started to vibrate. It was Roxy's phone. I answered. Hello, who is this? It was her work. They wanted her to come in early tomorrow. Not wanting to miss an opportunity to hunt, I gladly accepted. I will be there. I put the phone down and laughed. This is so easy. The next day, I woke up and put Roxy's work uniform on. It was a tight fit. I pulled her fringe down to cover the zip in her forehead, and I caught the bus to her work. Nothing out of the ordinary. No one knew that I was an alien. They thought I was a human. Brilliant. Roxy had worked in a cafe before I got to her. It was something low-key so that I could hide until summoned by the other Slitheen. I walked through the doors and was greeted by Roxy's boss. You're late, he said. I couldn't care less. This wasn't my job. It was Roxy's. We have customers coming in, so get to work. He handed me a notepad, and I walked over to a table to take an order. At the table was a businessman in a suit and tie. He had a stern look on his face, and he looked like he was important. 1 espresso, please, and a full English, he ordered. I wrote it all down and went back behind the counter. I had no idea how to make anything. I made what I thought an espresso was and brought it over to him. He snatched it off the tray as he was in a hurry. Thank you, he said before taking a drink and then spitting it out. Ugh! What the hell is this? He said angrily, looking at me. The place was silent, and people began to look at me. Despite this being a disguise for me, I still felt nervous. My stomach started to gurgle loudly in front of him. I'll get you a new one, sir. No, I want someone else to make me one. Where is your boss? He said angrily. I'll go find him for you, I responded, but I didn't need to. I could see him marching towards the table. What's going on here, he said. This waitress can't make an espresso. I made a simple order, the businessman exclaimed. The boss turned and looked directly at me. I want to see you after your shift is finished, Roxy. My stomach gurgled, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. Oh, pardon me. It's just a nervous stomach. Everyone in the cafe was looking at me, laughing. My boss, red-faced, angry. I walked away before anything else could go wrong. But what to do next? As I walked away from the angry scene at the cafe, my mind raced to come up with a plan. I decided that I needed to find a way to eliminate Roxy's boss. A devious smile crossed my face as I realized the opportunity to hunt again. I continued my shift at the cafe, serving the customers. However, I took one order that caused another problem for me. A family had ordered fish and chips. I went back to the kitchen to collect the order. I could smell the vinegar on it. Vinegar is my only weakness. A drop of vinegar could kill a slitheen like me if it got on my naked skin. I held the food as far away from me as possible. There you go. I was shaking as I put their order on the table. I went back behind the counter and wiped the sweat off my brow. Time went on and my meeting with Roxy's boss drew closer. The cafe started closing as customers finished up their drinks, and I shut the door. It was time to face Roxy's boss. I knocked on his office door and entered. His face still flushed with anger. I approached him confidently. Sit down, he said in a stern tone. I sat on a chair opposite his desk. I could feel Roxy's skin chafing. It was very uncomfortable.
Roxy, you have continuously been late for the past 2 weeks. Your attitude stinks. And let's not speak of the embarrassment that happened today, he said in an angry tone.
Sorry, I haven't been myself recently.
That's an understatement, he replied, narrowing his eyes. I don't know what's gotten into you, Roxy, but I expect more. Either you shape up or start looking for a new job.
As he turned back to his desk, I felt a mix of fear and frustration building. I wasn't going to lose this cover, not after all the effort I'd put into securing it. The thrill of the hunt bubbled up inside me once more. Actually, sir, I said, standing up with a twisted smile, I think we should discuss my improvements. At that point, I farted in front of him. Oopsie, where was I? Oh, yeah. He looked up startled. In one swift moment, I reached up, pulling Roxy's fringe back, and began to unzip my forehead. His eyes widened in horror as the alien blue glow seeped from the parting skin.
What are you?
He stammered, stumbling back in his chair. I leaned forward, my grin spreading. I am the last thing you'll ever see. I pulled the rest of Roxy's skin suit off, letting her fall lifelessly to the ground as my true form stretched out, looming over him. He screamed, his voice muffled as I lunged forward. Minutes later, I was back in Roxy's skin, adjusting her hair and wiping away the last trace of my hunt. No one else in the cafe would know the truth. The next day, I arrived at the cafe and felt it immediately. Something was wrong. A group of my co-workers huddled near the manager's office, their voices hushed and their expressions tense. One of them spotted me and turned, her eyes wide. Roxy, did you hear? Mr. Bradshaw. He's dead. They found him in his office early this morning. I gasped, feigning shock as my heart raced. What? How did it happen? Nobody knows, another co-worker muttered, glancing over his shoulder as though afraid someone might overhear. No signs of forced entry. They're saying natural causes, maybe. But the look on his face. His voice trailed off, haunted. I forced myself to keep my face neutral, though my mind churned, feigning innocence. It's awful, I murmured, letting my gaze drift to the floor. The police arrived soon after, sealing off the office. The cafe closed for the day and the staff were sent home, all of them shaken and whispering among themselves. I watched them file out, grateful for the unexpected cover. As the cafe closed for the day, I headed to the staff room to grab my bag and coat. The air felt heavy, every creak of the building settling making me jumpy. My co-workers had already cleared out, their voices fading as they left in a daze. I was almost alone, only the sounds coming from the muted hum of the overhead lights. Slipping my bag over my shoulder, I walked back through the cafe, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. That's when I noticed her, a young woman, in her mid-20s, sitting at a corner table with a sketch pad open in front of her. She hadn't ordered anything, but she seemed lost. Hey, I called out gently, walking towards her. Sorry, but we're closing early today. You'll have to head out. She looked up at me, and for a split second, I caught something in her eyes. Something sharp, too knowing for her age. But then she smiled, sweet and polite, and started packing her things. Okay, sorry about that, she said softly, her voice carrying an odd lilt, almost amused. I nodded, trying to shake off the weird vibe. It's fine, just a strange day for all of us. She slung her bag over her shoulder and walked to the door, pausing briefly to glance back at me. I hope tomorrow's better, she said, her words lingering in the air as she disappeared out onto the street. I stared at her for a moment, unsettled, before locking the door behind her. Later that afternoon, I wandered through the park, trying to quiet the noise in my head. As I passed a bench, I noticed the same woman standing nearby, staring at me with a curious smile. She was striking. Tall and confident, her close-cropped curls catching the sunlight, her presence magnetic in a way that put me slightly on edge. She felt familiar, though I couldn't place her. Hey, she called, waving me over with an easy grin. I thought I recognized you from the cafe. You work there, right? I nodded, cautious but intrigued. Yeah, I'm Roxy. And you? Zara, she said, her tone warmed, as though we'd known each other forever. I know we've never officially met, but I'm in the neighborhood a lot. Sorry about what happened today. That must have been rough. Her casual familiarity made me relax, just a little. Yeah, it was
It was a shock, I admitted, studying her. There was something oddly comforting about her presence, and soon we were chatting. She had this way of drawing you in, her confidence so natural it was almost contagious. You know, Zara said after a moment, tilting her head, I was thinking about hitting a bar tonight. It'd be nice to have some company. Shake off the day a little. You in? I hesitated, unsure. But there was a thrill in her invitation, a spark of something I hadn't felt in ages. Sure, I said with a grin. I could use a drink after today. We made plans to meet at a spot in town later. That evening, I walked into the bar, my fringe carefully positioned to hide the telltale zip on my forehead. Zara was already there, sitting in a cozy booth with 2 drinks waiting on the table. To unexpected friends, she said, raising her glass. To unexpected friends, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers and taking a cautious sip. As the conversation flowed, I found myself lowering my guard, surprised at how much I enjoyed her company. But as the night stretched on, Zena leaned forward, her eyes narrowing slightly, her tone shifting. So, Roxy, she began, casual but with a sharp edge. What's it like working at the cafe? Ever get tired of the routine? Her question caught me off guard, and my smile faltered for just a second. Yeah, it can be repetitive. Why? She smirked, a knowing glint in her eyes. Just curious. Sometimes people aren't who they seem. You know what I mean? Her words sent a jolt through me. For a brief moment, I wondered if she knew more than she let on. My stomach churned uneasily, and I felt the faint stirrings of gas bubbling up. I forced a laugh, trying to brush off the tension, but my mind raced, my instincts screaming at me to tread carefully. I narrowed my eyes, a prickling instinct telling me there was more to Zara than she was letting on. Leaning forward, I decided to test the waters, curious to see what she might reveal. So, Zara, I began, keeping my smile casual, even as tension buzzed under my skin. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? She raised an eyebrow and smirked, taking a deliberate sip of her drink. Oh, here and there, mostly from around town. Any family? I pressed, my tone light as though I wasn't analyzing her every word. Zara hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, her glaze flickering before she answered, A few scattered around, but I like my independence, keeps things flexible. I tilted my head, studying her carefully. Something about her answers didn't sit right. So, what do you do exactly? Nothing fancy, I'm a shop assistant, she said smoothly, her tone easy. There was a flicker of mischief in her eyes, something that made my stomach tighten. It pays the bills, helps me meet interesting people, like you, for example. I frowned slightly, though I tried to hide it. Her story didn't match the energy she gave off. Zara didn't have the tired, grounded demeanor of someone clocking hours at a shop. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, like she knew something I didn't. And then there was the nagging familiarity, the way she seemed to know me too well for someone I'd just met. Oh, I said, feigning casual curiosity. What kind of shop? She smiled, twirling her drink slowly before answering. A small one, she said vaguely. We get all sorts of odd stuff. Unique inventory, you might say. Something twisted in my stomach. And it wasn't just the drink. The vagueness didn't sit right with me. Zara felt like a puzzle I couldn't piece together, and I hated that. But I knew better than to push too hard and risk giving myself away. So, you get along with your boss? I asked, probing gently, hoping she'd let something slip. Zara chuckled softly, her eyes narrowing as she leaned in slightly. Bosses and I don't always see eye to eye, Roxy, she said, her voice carrying a playful edge. Her words sent a ripple of unease through me, and I forced myself to keep smiling. I took a slow sip of my drink, trying to steady my thoughts. Zara wasn't just a friendly stranger, that much was clear. And the way she looked at me, like she already knew what I was hiding, made my skin crawl. Whoever, or whatever, Zara was, she wasn't here by chance. And the unnerving part? She might know exactly what I was. My stomach gave an all too familiar rumble, and Zara chuckled, raising an eyebrow. Sounds like someone's had a heavy meal, she teased, her tone playful. I tried to laugh it off, but the discomfort was building. Before I could stop it, I let out a loud, echoing fart. My face burned, and I muttered, "Oops, guess it's something I ate." Before I could spiral into full-blown embarrassment, Zara leaned back and let out a loud, unapologetic fart of her own. She grinned mischievously. "Don't worry about it," she said with a wink. "Happens to the best of us." My eyes widened. That wasn't the reaction I expected. Ordinary humans either recoiled in disgust or tried to politely pretend it didn't happen. Zara, though, seemed amused. No, comfortable with it. Almost too comfortable. That's when it hit me like a lightning bolt. Was Zara a Slitheen too? My mind raced. Trying to keep my face neutral, I couldn't ask outright. If I was wrong, it could blow my cover. But if she was like me, I needed to be sure. I glanced around to make sure no one was within earshot and leaned closer to her. "You know," I said softly, my voice low enough to stay between us, "I've always found human bodies be a bit of a squeeze." Zara's eyes sparkled, and her grin turned knowing. "Oh, tell me about it," she replied just as quietly. "These skins have so many limits." My pulse quickened. She knew. She knew! "Especially around the middle," I added, testing her further. "All that gas." She laughed softly, her tone filled with shared understanding. "Nothing like a little gas to keep things interesting." Her gaze locked onto mine, intense and unflinching. That was it. The confirmation I needed. Zara wasn't just anyone. She was like me. We were both Slitheen, hiding in plain sight. "So, Roxy," she said with a sly smile, leaning forward, "how long have you been in town?" I smirked, letting my disguise slip just enough for my alien eyes to glint briefly in their true color. "Long enough," I replied, my voice steady. "Long enough to know there's a lot of opportunity here." Zara's grin widened, her expression predatory and full of excitement. "You know," she said, tilting her head, "we should get together sometime. There's plenty of room for a few good hunts in this place." I leaned in, my voice low but laced with amusement. "So, I guess your boss is out of the picture too? Well, let me guess, you hunted him?" Zara burst out laughing, the sound a mix of glee and disdain. "Oh, absolutely. Couldn't stand that pathetic job. Pretending to care about stock levels and customer complaints." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "One less mundane human to worry about." A grin spread across my face, a rare sense of kinship sparking between us. I hadn't felt this understood since I arrived. "How about we go somewhere more private? My place, perhaps?" Her eyes lit up, and she leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "I'm in. I could use a break from the skin." As we left the bar together, Zara smirked and glanced sideways at me. "I assume you've dealt with the parents as well?" I gave her a smug nod. Let's just say I've had the house to myself for a while now. We exchanged knowing glances as we walked back to my place, both of us eager to shed these restrictive human disguises. It wasn't often I met someone who understood the daily frustrations of being crammed into these awkward, sweaty skins. But tonight, we'd finally get to stretch out in our true forms, unencumbered by human limitations. As we reached my front door, I fumbled with the keys, my hands trembling slightly from a mix of excitement and nerves. I could feel Zara standing close behind me, her energy almost crackling with anticipation. The moment we crossed the threshold, we'd finally drop the charade, finally be ourselves. And then, as I slid the key into the lock, Zara let out a loud, unapologetic fart. I froze, my shoulders shaking as I tried, and failed, to stifle a laugh. "Really?" I said, glancing back at her with a smirk. "What?" Zara grinned, completely unfazed. It's these damn skins, you know how it is. Oh, I know, I said, pushing the door open. The thought of shedding my disguise in front of someone who understood made my chest buzz with anticipation. And we're about to be free of them, she chuckled, stepping inside with me, her excitement mirroring mine. Finally. When we stepped inside, I locked the door behind us and turned to Zara with a grin. Ready to get comfortable? Without a word, we both reached up, fingers finding the zips hidden on our foreheads. Slowly, deliberately, we unzipped our human suits, letting the disguises slip away. The relief was immediate, like shedding an unbearably tight jacket after a long day. In moments, we stood there in our towering green true forms. My claws flexed as I stretched, savoring the feeling of being free again. Ah, Zara sighed, extending her long arms with satisfaction. Much better. Isn't it? I agreed, my voice now resonating with its natural guttural timbre. Nothing like being out of that restrictive skin. We laughed together, the sound echoing through the room. No more hiding, no more pretending. Just two slithing, free to be ourselves, plotting and relaxing, ready for whatever schemes and hunts tomorrow might bring.
There you are, if you'd just like to go through and get changed. Now, if you'd like to head down to the end of the corridor, it's first on the left.
Thank you.